Okay, ready to dive into something really interesting. We're going deep into Spiritism.
Oh, yeah.
But not just like ghost stories and stuff. We're talking about the core ideas.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. The Spiritist codification. Ever heard of it?
It's like, imagine Spiritism is a house, right? The codification is the blueprint, the framework, the whole structure.
And every good house needs a good architect. Yeah. That's where Allan Kardec comes in.
He's the guy.
His writings are like the essential texts.
Exactly.
So where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, you got to start with the foundation.
Okay.
The Spirits book.
Okay.
Published in 1857, over 1,000 questions about life, death, the universe, all answered by spirits.
Wait, hold on. He just like interviewed spirits?
That's the thing. He worked with mediums and, cross-checked every
Should I make
entry.
sure they weren't messing with him?
Wes. Well, to ensure consistency. He was meticulous.
So what kind of questions are we talking about here?
The big ones. Meaning of life, good and evil, suffering. Like reincarnation, for example. The Spirit's answers give a whole new perspective on how our actions affect our future lives.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Those mind-blowing concepts, that's what makes it so fascinating.
And that's just the beginning. Kardec didn't shy away from anything, heaven and hell. He dug into it all.
He wasn't just like putting a spiritual spin on old religious ideas, was he?
No way. He forged a new path. Logic, reason, and those spirit voices, they were his guides.
This is wild. So after the Spirits book lays the groundwork, what's next in understanding Spiritism?
Well, once you know the what, you got to figure out the how. That takes us to the book on mediums.
Ooh, okay. Does it come with a Ouija board?
Not quite. But it get into the practical side of things, how spirits talk to us.
Okay, so there's a method to it. Oh,
Definitely. But it's not just about techniques. He talks about the ethics, Can we trust these messages? How do we know it's not just our imagination?
Those are some heavy questions.
Right. It's about finding that balance. The seen and the unseen, logic and mystery.
This is blowing my mind. So it's not just about lighting candles and hoping for the best.
There's a real art to it. And Kardec, he breaks it all down.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about different types of mediums.
Exactly. And how their abilities let them tap into the spirit world.
So it's not one size fits all then.
Not at all. And that's what's so cool about this book. It's like a guidebook, a warning, and this call for deeper understanding all in one.
You could probably do a whole deep dive on just this book, honestly. But we've got more to cover. What comes after this whole deep dive into mediumship?
So we know how to talk to spirits, but what do they have to say about, like, morality?
Yeah.
Jesus' teachings. That's where the gospel according to Spiritism comes in.
Whoa. Okay. That title's a bit of a curveball. Are we getting religious now?
Not exactly. Kardec was always looking for those common threads. In this book, he looks at Jesus' moral teachings through the lens of Spiritism.
So like charity, forgiveness, those big ideas.
Exactly. Like he talks about reincarnation and how it connects to Jesus' teachings on love and compassion.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
How can you truly forgive your enemies if you've got grudges from, like, past lives, right?
No. Okay, so it's about more than just reading the Bible.
It's about really thinking about these ideas in a new light. That's what Kardec wants us to do.
It's like he's saying, don't just read the words, feel them across lifetimes. Okay, I'm hooked. So we've got communication, we've got morality. Where do we go from here?
Well, if we're talking about what happens after we die, the next stop has to be the afterlife. And Kardec doesn't hold back in heaven and hell.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Everyone wants to know what happens after we kick the bucket. What's the Spiritist take? Pearly gates, fire and brimstone.
Laughed us. It's a little more complicated than that. Kardec looks at those traditional views and, well, he questions them. He paints a way more complex picture of the afterlife based on what spirits themselves have said.
So no harps or pitchforks.
Not exactly. He describes a place where we face the consequences of our actions. But it's not about punishment. It's about growth, like a cosmic learning experience.
It's less about judgment, more about, like, cosmic course correction.
Right. It's not a destination, it's a journey.
Wow. That's a whole new way to look at things. I can see why this is still relevant today. But he doesn't stop at the afterlife, does he? He goes even bigger, am I right?
You're on a roll. The Genesis. That's where he tackles the really big questions, the whole universe.
Trying to explain everything. Ambitious.
You could say that. He's trying to bring together science and spirituality, understand how the universe was created. He talks about planets forming, miracles, even the possibility of seeing the future.
Hold up. Predicting the future. Now that's something I want to hear more about. Did he leave a guide to winning the lottery?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
But he explores premonitions and how time and space are connected. It's pretty mind-blowing.
I bet. So let me get this straight. We've got the Spirits book, the book on mediums, the Gospel according to Spiritism, and Heaven and Hell.
That's right.
Each one tackles these huge existential topics. It's a lot to take in.
And we're not even done. Remember those other works we talked about? They might not be as famous, but they give us even more to think about.
Like bonus features? What's in those then?
Well, there's his review Spirit. He started in 1858, and it's like this amazing collection of writings, letters, stories about spirits. It's like a window into the early days of Spiritism.
Wow, a first-hand account. That must have been an exciting time. What else is there?
Then, in 1859, he wrote, What is Spiritism?
Like Spiritism for beginners.
Yeah. He wanted to make sure everyone could understand these ideas, not just academics. Everyone deserves to find answers to life's big questions.
I like that. He wasn't trying to keep it a secret. But he wasn't just a writer, right? Didn't he travel around and talk to people?
Oh, yeah, he did. In 1862, he traveled all over France, talking about Spiritism. He even wrote about it in Spiritist Journey in 1862. He wasn't afraid of skeptics at all.
Sounds like he was more interested in sparking curiosity than, like, converting people.
Exactly. He loved a good debate. Always said that critical thinking was key.
And that brings us to another interesting one, the Spiritist Review. It later became the Mediums book, right? Wasn't it supposed to be like a how-to guide for mediums?
At first, yeah. But as he learned more, it became this deep dive into mediumship, how to do it responsibly, all the ethics involved.
So he was always learning, always digging deeper.
Always. And he wanted his readers to do the same. He saw his books as starting points, not the final word. It's like he was constantly revising, always wanting to get it right.
Always learning, yeah. Okay, so back to the Spiritist Review for a sec. It eventually became the Mediums book, right?
Yeah, it's kind of wild how that happened. Like, it started as this guide for mediums, but it grew into this whole thing about the ethics of talking to spirits, how to do it responsibly.
So less about the how-to, more about the should we.
Exactly. It's not just about having the ability, it's about using it the right way.
That's a really important point. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got the basics of Spiritism, we've got the how-to and the should we of mediumship. What else is there?
Well, once you understand how to communicate with spirits, the next question is, what do those spirits have to say about, like, morality?
Okay, yeah, that's a big one.
Right. And that leads us to the Gospel according to Spiritism.
Hold on. The gospel, like the Bible. Are we talking about religion now?
It's not about converting anyone. It's more about looking at Jesus' teachings through a Spiritist lens.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. So, like, what would Jesus say about reincarnation, for example?
Exactly. Or how can we truly forgive someone if we've been carrying grudges across multiple lifetimes?
Oh, that's deep. So it's really about thinking about these moral questions in a whole new way.
Exactly. Kardec wants us to go beyond blind faith, to really wrestle with these ideas. You know, he's not afraid to ask the tough questions.
Which is what makes this so interesting. So we've got communication, we've got morality. What else did Kardec explore?
Well, we've talked about what happens after we die, but he also wrote a whole book about it, Heaven and Hell.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Everyone wants to know what happens after we die. What's the Spiritist take?
It's not as simple as you might think. He really digs into those traditional views of heaven and hell, challenges them even. Based on what the spirits told him, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So no pearly gates or anything?
Not quite. He describes it more as a place of learning and growth. We face the consequences of our actions, but it's not about punishment. It's about evolving.
So less about judgment, more about cosmic course correction.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination.
I like that. It makes you think, doesn't it? So we've covered communication, morality, the afterlife. What else is there?
Well, Kardec didn't stop there. He went even bigger. In the Genesis, he tries to explain the entire universe.
Whoa, okay. That's ambitious. How does he even begin to tackle that?
He tries to bring together science and spirituality. He talks about the formation of planets, miracles, even the possibility of predicting the future.
Wait a minute, predicting the future. Did he leave a stock tip or something?
Laughs. Not quite. But he does explore the idea of premonitions and how time might not be as linear as we think it is.
Mind-blowing stuff. It's incredible how he could go from these really practical questions about communicating with spirits to trying to explain the entire universe.
I know, right? It's like his mind knew no bounds. He was constantly searching, always wanting to understand more.
It's really amazing how much he wrote, always exploring these big ideas.
And the Genesis, that was his last work,
Yeah.
published in 1868. Like, he saved the biggest question for last.
Trying to understand the whole universe, that's a huge undertaking. What kind of things does he talk about in Genesis?
Everything from how planets are formed to, like, the nature of miracles. He even touches on the idea of predicting the future, which, let's be honest, who wouldn't want to do that?
Right. A little heads up about next week's lottery numbers would be nice.
Right.
Seriously. But what I find really fascinating about Genesis is how Kardec tries to find that connection between what we can see and what we can't. Science and spirituality.
It's like he's asking, can these two things exist together? And instead of just wondering, he wrote a whole book about it.
Exactly. And that's what I love about his work. He wasn't afraid to ask those big, maybe even unanswerable questions. And he encouraged everyone else to do the same.
He really wanted people to think for themselves, didn't he?
Absolutely. He didn't want anyone to just blindly accept anything. He wanted them to question, to learn, to grow. And his books, they were just the starting point.
It's like that saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Right. And even after Kardec passed away, there's still more to learn from him. Remember posthumous works?
Oh, yeah, that was published in 1890, right after he was gone.
Yep. It's a collection of his unpublished writings, notes, all sorts of things.
So we get a peek into his process. That must be fascinating for spiritists. Totally. It's like reading his personal journal in a way. You get to see his thoughts, his struggles, all those things that make him human.
Even after he was gone, he was still contributing to the conversation. That says a lot about him.
It really does. And it shows that these big questions, they don't just go away. Questions about our souls, what happens after we die, the meaning of life.
They've been around forever, and probably will be for a long time to come.
And that's why we're here, right? Diving deep into these ideas, exploring Spiritism.
Exactly. It's more than just spooky stories or trying to talk to ghosts. It's about searching for answers.
It's about opening our minds to possibilities.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
I hope they feel that sense of wonder, that there's so much more to discover about the universe, about ourselves.
I love that. And what really struck me was the emphasis on personal responsibility. We have the power to choose our own path, to learn and grow.
Exactly. That's a huge part of Spiritism. We're not just along for the ride, we're active participants in our own spiritual evolution.
That's a really empowering thought. So, any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they continue their own exploration of Spiritism?
I'd ask them to think about this. If you could sit down with Allan Kardec himself, what would you ask him? What mysteries would you want to unravel? Let those questions guide you on your journey.
That's such a great point. The journey of learning never really ends, does it? Always more to discover. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the Spiritist codification. Until next time, keep those minds open and those questions coming.